Well, you might be wondering, does he ever actually work? Does he ever actually do something other than skiing? And the answer is actually yes. The last 4 days, I've actually been working tirelessly on my architecture projects. But yes, today I am going skiing. But here's the reason why I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk about the comparison between my clothes when I go skiing and the Canadian truckers. Hi, welcome back to the Colorblind Architect, and here I am driving up Big Cottonwood Canyon, going skiing again. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys about this is because of what I'm wearing. What I'm wearing for skiing. And you're probably thinking, what the heck am I talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is, when you go skiing, obviously you don't go skiing naked, especially when, like today, the high is about 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, basically low to mid 30s in Fahrenheit. So, obviously it would be very uncomfortable to ski naked, right? Well, we all know that. That's why we wear clothes, duh. Okay, well, then what is it about these clothes? Well, there's specific clothes that you wear. Like, for example, you can see I'm wearing a base layer. That base layer is has some insulating properties, but also some breathability properties. Then on top of that, I wear waterproof ski pants and a waterproof ski jacket, because obviously, with a lot of snow, even on a day like today where it's really dry and clear, you still need to protect yourself from the moisture, which is the snow, right? But in terms of being able to fully protect yourself from the cold, for example, okay, well, you could go crazy heavy. We add tons of insulation, maybe like a big, huge, fur-lined hood and stuff like that, like you see in the movies, of people going into the Arctic and stuff. And yeah, sure, you could wear all this extra stuff, but there is a certain point where there's a diminishing return. And it's this diminishing return that I want to talk about. So, how does this relate to architecture? Well, architecture, it's the same thing, right? We insulate, we put a winter coat on our buildings, right? So, in this case, a winter coat for your building is in the form of insulation. It's not just any insulation. You've got to design it right so that, your building still functions properly, right? Just throwing insulation, for example, if you just throw in a cotton-based insulation into your walls, well, as soon as you get moisture in there, your insulation's worthless. Plus, it's an organic fiber, so it's going to become moldy and mildewy. So these are problems that you have to deal with as an architect, right? Well, so why don't we just insulate like crazy big? Why can't we just go with like an R60 in the walls and in the roof? Well, you could, but again, there's diminishing returns. There's a certain point in any climate zone where if you go too far, it's actually going to be deleterious. It's actually going to be a problem, both in your finances for the project and also for the actual performance of the building. There is a right amount of insulation. And all this to say, this is a form of protection, right? Now, protection. Why? Why protection? Well, we live in a dangerous world, right? I mean, like every time I go skiing, I am taking a risk, right? Now, for me, it is a calculated risk based on the fact that I have a huge amount of fun while I do it. And I also have equipment that is properly cared for and tuned so that I can maintain a sufficient level of safety. And then I also, I take my own calculated risks as to which ski trails I go down, how I do it. These are all risks that I take. But I know a lot of people, for example, let me put it this way. The Utah Department of Transportation, usually in January, usually has a big Chiron graphic on the signs along the interstate that say 0 traffic fatalities, a goal worth going for. Okay, great. So 0 traffic fatalities sounds like a wonderful goal. Laudable goal, even. Okay. And I don't totally disagree with it. What I would say is it even remotely possible? Could you ever get to 0 traffic fatalities? Okay, well, theoretically, yes. But at what cost? For example, one of the ways in which the Utah Department of Transportation reduces the risk of traffic deaths is they design the roads, they redesign them, reconstruct them on a regular basis, adding additional safety features, lengthening out curves, smoothing out bumps, adding guardrails. There's all kinds of design features that get designed into a road to make it safer. Now, what is the actual 100% guaranteed way of ensuring 0 traffic fatalities? Well, obviously, banning automobile transportation. If you get rid of automobile transportation, then 100% of traffic-related deaths would go away. Okay, well, that's one solution, but you know what I would say? Absolutely not. That would be stupid. It would be horrifying, and I think there would actually be more people dying of the lack of access to material goods and services than there would be from the actual deaths by automobile. So why do I bring this up? Well, for the past 2 years, the governments around the globe have engaged in what I would argue is the, hey, let's eliminate traffic deaths by banning the automobile solution. They have gone so overboard with trying to prevent deaths by COVID that they have restricted the very supply chains and freedoms that we need in order for our economies to function so that we can actually supply people with the material goods that they need to live and to survive, let alone their jobs, which are also necessary. Because if you don't have work, not only will you not have money, but if, as Elon Musk famously said, if you don't make stuff, you have no stuff. So the point is that we've gone way overboard as a globe in trying to prevent deaths by COVID to the exclusion of considerations of all other factors of life. And the result has been a lot of pain and misery, and even a lot of deaths by suicide, deaths by other factors, all because they were hyper-focused on one thing. One thing. But we've got millions of ways we can die. After all, even laying in your bed at home, you can die from a meteor hitting your house. Now, it's extremely unlikely. Now, could you actually build a solution to protect yourself from this certain death of a meteor striking your house, assuming it happens? Well, yes, you could. But what would that look like? Well, architecturally, that would probably be a bunker 100 feet below ground. Well, what would you lose? What would you lose if you actually went for that architectural solution? Well, first, you'd lose a lot of money, because that's a very expensive thing to build. Second, you'd lose windows. You'd lose access to nature. You'd lose your humanity. You'd become a mole, right? You wouldn't actually be human. Because to be human, you're part of nature. You're with trees. You're with other people. And so there's so many costs to that solution for a very narrow solution of saving yourself from a nuclear blast or a meteor strike, right? That it would basically destroy any chance of all the rest of your life being happy. And so this is what I'm trying to say about the problem with the solutions put forward for COVID over the past 2 years have been draconian and overbearing, and it hasn't even prevented death. COVID has still struck. Millions have still died. And, you know, a case in point, there was an airplane full of Mormon missionaries flying from Salt Lake City to Tonga this past week. Every single one of them tested negative for COVID when they got on the flight. The pilot and the flight attendants also tested negative. Everybody on the airplane was wearing masks. Everybody was following protocol. 80% of those missionaries, once they got to Tonga, tested positive for COVID-19. They hadn't even been exposed to it on the plane. So, there's something wrong there, right? Well, what's wrong with it is we are trusting in our own wisdom. We're trusting in our own genius and thinking that we can cheat fate. We're thinking that we can stop a virus in its tracks just because we've been successful with things like polio. But guess what? Polio's still out there. Guess what? Smallpox is still out there. It's not to say that these aren't still a problem. They're just not a problem in most areas of the world, right? Because we have proper vaccines. And those vaccines are great, wonderful. So, why does this relate to the truckers? Well, the Canadian truckers, they're fighting to end the tyranny of the medical establishment and the politicians who would rather overcompensate their own fear of being seen as not doing enough than to uphold the Constitution of Canada and the Charter of Human Rights. Now, I'm an American, so I don't know too much about the way the Canadian Charter of Human Rights is set up. What I do know is that they do have a lot of the similar human rights that we have here in this country. And it's something that should be protected. It's something that we should all recognize that we have these for a reason. We have these so that we don't do stupid stuff like taking people's freedoms away. And this is what the Canadian truckers are fighting for. They're fighting to end overbearing safety protocols that don't actually have the return on investment that is being sold. And in other words, it's a diminishing return. A vaccine passport will not actually save anybody's lives. It will not stop anything, especially since the COVID-19 vaccine is not actually a vaccine. It is a mRNA treatment that helps your immune system produce more antibodies against a specific spike protein. And as a result, can help minimize your body's reaction to the virus. It does not actually stop the virus. It does not actually protect you from it. And it does not even stop transmission. Because if you have the vaccine, you may actually still transmit the virus. So then why do we have a vaccine mandate? Why is Canada instituting a vaccine passport? It's these kinds of things that the truckers are fighting against, not because they're anti-vax, not because they're not even vaccinated themselves. A lot of them are. What they're trying to say is, hey, stop taking our liberties, stop taking our freedoms for a feel-good measure that isn't actually doing the job. Like I said, you can build your house 100 feet below the ground in a bunker format and protect yourself against a meteor strike. But you know what? You're still going to live an impoverished and horrible existence there. At some point, you have to risk. At some point, living means going skiing and potentially crashing into a tree and dying. I hope I don't do that. I don't think I will. I'm a pretty good skier. I don't think I will. But ultimately, you have to take risks to be able to live life. And hopefully that is something that will help you in your life live better. I'm the Colorblind Architect. Peace out.